Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health?
Hi everyone, Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you today with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. I'm really excited to have with me today as my guest, Lauren Morgan. She is a trauma and recovery business coach, an energy master and mystic, and the founder of Wild Wisdom LLC. She empowers frustrated coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs to overcome imposter syndrome, their limiting beliefs, and self-sabotage so they can turn their pain into purpose, transform their wounds into wisdom, and create their soul-driven and heart-centered business. Welcome, Lauren.
Hello, thank you. I feel so honored and blessed to be here. It's such a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would love to start off, as we always do on the show, with hearing a little bit more about you and your story. How did you get to this place where you're doing this incredible work that you're doing today?
Oh, it's a beautiful question. And I have to admit, my story is a bit dramatic. I just turned 37 just a few weeks ago. And I realized at this time that is a good portion of my life, like probably more than half of it, I spent my life really miserable. Like I was not happy at all. So this person I am now that's like funky and I think I'm hilarious, a good sense of humor. I'm always smiling. I'm a little bit feral. I don't like to brush my hair. All these things that are really unique to me. I was a completely different person. And because by age 11, I was clinically depressed. My teenage years were filled with me burning my own flesh to mask my emotional pain. By the time I turned 19, I'd already tried to kill myself 4 different times. I still remember like the weight of the gun in my hand and even the sound that it made when it misfired. In my 20s were not much better. Self-destructive behavior, using drugs still to mask my emotional pain, making myself throw up to feel smaller, to feel beautiful, to fit in, so much self-destruction. And by the time I hit my late 20s, oh my goodness, 29, 30, and 31, they were filled with seizures almost every single day for 3 years. It felt like my body was failing me. It was screaming for help. And I had this like medical mystery that doctors could not diagnose, could not figure out, didn't know how to do anything with. And I actually had to leave my career as a biopharmaceutical scientist because I just couldn't keep it together. My body was so weak. And I knew at that point that I had to take healing into my own hands. And so I went really, really deep into some deep introspection. And I realized that all of that depression, the suicide attempts, the eating disorders, and the medical mystery, the seizures, everything was connected to when I was 6 years old and I was raped. I had this really amazing moment of clarity one day. It was just this random day. I was walking my dogs in the field behind my house. And I can remember it so vividly because like the sky was like the perfect color blue. There was a light wind going through my hair, across my face. And the grass was like that knee-high length where my dogs were just bouncing up and down. Little heads and little ears are just kind of flopping up and down. And it was so cute to watch. But as I was watching them, filled with so much joy and they were having the time of their life, I got overfilled with emotion, with jealousy and anger and like despair, because I realized in that moment the joy that they were experiencing, I hadn't felt that in a very long time. And I fell to the ground screaming and crying and releasing these like animalistic noises from like every ounce of my body. And I'm laying there in the grass, having this full body release. And I lifted 2 middle fingers up to the sky and gave God, source, universe, creator a giant double fuck you. That's just where I was in that moment. I was not holding back. I had a big curse out session with, me and up there. But still, on the floor, on the ground, in the dirt, this really sweet and soft voice came in. I tried to ignore it, but it just kept coming through. And this soft, sweet voice told me that life was not meant to be this hard. Life was not meant to be this difficult or painful. And in that moment, that's when everything really shifted. That's when I made a promise to myself, probably for the very first time, to take care of me. I wanted to know what self-love really felt like. I wanted to know what the authentic joy and true happiness really felt like. So I started to dive into these modalities such as Ayurveda, which showed me all the ways that my body was so out of balance and screaming for help. Shamanism showed me all the ways that trauma was imprinted on my energy. And hypnosis showed me the ways that I could dive deep into my unconscious and just bring things forward with tenderness and care and love. And I didn't just do like the surface level work. I went in deep, the uncomfortable, soul shaking, screaming sort of deep level of work. And these modalities, they weren't just things I studied. They became a part of me. I started to live that lifestyle. And when I really focused on my own inner healing and just putting me first for the very first time, it felt like uncharted territory, a little scary at first, but life really came around for me in a whole new way. And that's when I realized that this was what I was meant to do. I was meant to give this to the world in my own unique way. And that's what started to happen. And I just started to work with entrepreneurs, other spiritual seekers who are still like feeling so restricted by the core beliefs that they've had maybe since they were a young child, or something scary that happened to them. And they're still telling themselves that's who they are. And they base the rest of their life on a certain situation or a saying or something that they're telling themselves. It's just not fitting them anymore. And so that's where I am today, just feeling so empowered and authentic. And yeah, I don't brush my hair and I freaking love it. And just allowing other people to serve in their own unique way, and also breaking the mold of what selling is, because that's just another box we tend to put ourselves in. So finding the authentic leadership, however it comes forward.
What an incredible story. And so apropos to these times I think that we're living in, where so many people I think can relate to that experience of having had traumatic, painful experiences and feeling wrecked and devastated, and the limiting beliefs, which I definitely want to explore more with you, the limiting beliefs that come from having experiences like that, right? Things like I'm so broken or damaged, like there's no way I could ever heal from this. What, just out of curiosity, like when people who've had those experiences come to you in this space of feeling so broken and defeated, like what words do you offer them? Or like, do you share your story? Or like, how can you help someone who feels so devastated, like find hope again to move forward?
Yeah, that is a great question. And it's one of those things where everything is so unique to the person, right? There is no like definite path of moving forward. But the first thing we have to do is to learn what it is to love ourselves. And even those uncomfortable moments where, yes, we probably had some self-destructive behavior that maybe we are not proud of, but we have to love ourselves through those pieces. By shaming them and pretending it didn't happen, or just filling ourselves with more despair and more regret, isn't going to help us move forward. And I feel like that's really the number one thing that a lot of us that struggle with, is how do we love ourselves even in those times where we were harmful to our own body and to our own mind, our own spirit. But you just have to start. Just maybe one thing. I love mirror work. Mirror work is so powerful, where you look yourself in the mirror and you see yourself and you hear yourself say, I love you. It took me like probably over a couple dozen times before I could say it without bawling my eyes out, but it's so powerful and so simple, but something about seeing yourself and hearing yourself at the same time, saying those words, ooh, baby, it hits deep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, to let people know, and your story is such a great example of this, that even though in the moment when you're at the lowest of the low, it feels like there's never going to be a way out of this. You're never going to heal from this stuff. Like there is hope. Actually, you can come out of it. People do. We call it post-traumatic growth. When you're able to shift you've done enough of that digging, and you've worked your way through those experiences, and you're able to come out the other side and say, yeah, wow, I'm a survivor. I'm like, we were talking earlier about my logo, right?
I
For my business,
love that.
I'm the phoenix bird, right? Like this big beautiful bird rising from the ashes. That really is possible. But I think the key piece, and you named it, is you have to do the work.
Yeah.
People have a lot of misperceptions about trauma, and trauma being something like, well, just get over it. It's in the past. It happened. Yeah, it sucked, whatever, but like move on. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that approach doesn't really work?
Oh, we could go on that for like a whole like hour. But really, we always get like, again, it's these other things that we keep hearing, like, oh, don't feel that, you have all this to be grateful for, or time heals all wounds, just suck it up, buttercup. Those used to be things I used to tell myself, but none of it freaking worked. None of it worked. And so the big thing that really helped shift for like, my journey was just to honor what I was feeling, to stop saying I was okay when I really wasn't okay, to stop hiding these emotions that are within me. When I wanted to scream, I'd go find some place that I could scream and let it out. Because we're so afraid to really be authentic. And being authentic is more than just being weird and quirky and doing odd stuff with hands. It's also just allowing ourselves to feel what we're feeling in that moment. It's the saying that I hear all the time that always drives me crazy. And I did touch base on it, but it's, oh, you don't feel that, right? You have no reason to feel that. Stop feeling sad. Don't feel this. Don't feel that. We're human. We're meant to feel those things. And if working through it means screaming or going to those, what do they call the break rooms, right? Where you like throw shit on the ground and hear them crash. They are so therapeutic. I have a drum that I call her my sacrificial drum, where she's just this beautiful giant drum. And I would just bang the crap out of it and scream and yell and just just all this like vocal noise coming out, chanting, whatever came through. But it was so helpful for me. That sacred rage is really part of the journey for some of us. And the more you try to dive it, bury it deeper, well, it didn't work the first time. And chances are it's still not going to work. Time does not heal all wounds.
No. And we've talked on the show before. We've gotten even into the science of like how trauma is physiological, not just psychological. You can't just skirt around it. You can't just brush it away. It lives inside your very cells, in your bones, in your tissue. I used to be a massage therapist, and like, just touching someone's body sometimes like would create this massive release of like all this like pent up emotional stuff, or sometimes memories and flashbacks, and pieces of the trauma would come back to someone, just even in a light, gentle, caring touch. And it's funny, I as you were talking, I heard 3 A's, which is acknowledgement. Like, first we have to acknowledge that a trauma has even happened, because I think so we also have a lot of misperceptions about it, what it is. The rehab where I work, where we specialize in treating it, I often hear women kind of shut down and not sharing. And it's like, well, why aren't you sharing about your experiences in groups and stuff? And it's like, well, I haven't been through what they've been through. Like, they've really been through some horrible things. My trauma isn't that bad. So there's this level of like dismissal. So we're not even really acknowledging, or if we're saying get over it, move on, whatever, we're not acknowledging it. That was the first one. The second thing I heard was allowance, like just like allowing yourself, and it goes with the authenticity, the other one, allowing yourself to just feel what you're feeling, acknowledging, yeah, this happened. I feel horrible. I feel like I want to like scream, but I can't let myself do that. Allowing yourself to feel the feelings, scream them out, cry them out, whatever you need to do in a very authentic kind of way. So it's almost like these are like the ABCs of healing. We start with the 3 A's, right? We're creating our own thing here. What do you think about that?
I think I love how you caught those letters, and yeah, it's right on point. And it just shows like all the times that we feel like we have to be perfect, right? And like show the world that this perfect little thing that we are, right? That we're just trying to put forward a different perspective than what's really going on the inside. And it's just not serving anybody. It's not serving ourselves. It's not serving the world. It's just, we're not growing that way. And when you mentioned as far as like that physical touch point, I can really relate to that because there was a good time. My husband, oh my goodness, how patient he was with me, but he would literally come up behind me to give me a hug. My first initial reaction, right, was to elbow punch him or like put my fist up. It's like, right, like that was just my body's reaction. And thankfully, he was very patient with me. We communicated in a way. It was like, okay, if you want to come up behind me and give me a hug, let me know you're there. Tell me what you want to do. Give me 3 seconds so I can like allow myself to be in that receptive mood, but also have the ability to say no if I'm not able to receive that love.
That is a really good point, and it's something I want to highlight because we talk about that at the rehab as well, or any kind of group setting. It's like our natural instinct, especially if we're a caring person or we might be like very comfortable with touch, is to recognize that a person who's been through a trauma, especially if it's a physical or sexual trauma, if it involved a trauma that involved another person, a relational type trauma, that if you see a person like that in distress, your immediate instinct might be to want to touch them, to give them a hug or whatever it is, or say, they're there. But actually that can be re-traumatizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
For someone where touch has not always been safe or caring or nurturing, your intention to be that might actually be received the wrong way, and can be actually more traumatizing. We would call that a trauma response. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So for the people who have loved ones, right, what are some other recommendations you might have for loved ones of folks who have had trauma? Like, what else did your husband have to learn how to do to support you?
Yes, thank you for that. Communication was a big part. And it was a two-way street of him learning how to receive what I was saying without taking it personally. Because, of course, if you say you don't want a hug from your loved one or your husband or your family, it's very easy for them to be like, oh, what's wrong with me for you not to want to receive a hug, right? I'm just trying to give you love. But it's not about them, right? It's about working through that piece together. And it really is like a two-way conversation. We both need to be able to openly share what we are feeling and what we're like going through in this safe container where neither of us are judging each other or holding against each other. Just this is where we're at right now, right? And how can we hold each other with love and compassion and non-judgment, because we're working through this for the greater purpose to have that deeper connection.
Yes. And I think this will be a nice segue into one of the pieces that I think is so important in the work that you do with folks, and that I do as well, is this idea of the limiting beliefs. Because what I find a lot is folks who've been through traumatic experiences often form these very distorted beliefs about themselves, about the world, about all different kinds of things. But with themselves, they often feel like, I don't deserve, right? That because this has happened, and maybe it was my fault, right? So there can be self-blame, like, it's my fault this thing happened to me. There's something wrong with me. I don't deserve to be loved, or I don't deserve the love you're trying to give me. I think that can show up for folks, right? When a loved one's trying to show love and you're like, but I don't deserve it. And they might not even be conscious of it. Can you start talking to us about all that?
Yes, and just there's so many different limiting beliefs that do come forward because, especially if it happened early in life, we create these core beliefs in a way our mind's trying to keep us safe, right? That's the way it's constructed. But carrying that through your life, you start to realize that it's not serving you, it's not keeping you safe anymore. And the beliefs that come forward a lot are, I'm not safe. I don't deserve, like you said, I don't deserve love, but it goes into, I don't deserve happiness. I don't deserve money. I don't deserve to be like any sort of well off in a position. Even kind of goes into, goodness, just not even having trust or confidence in yourself. And I always like to imagine, like, say you had a core belief when you were younger that you're not safe, right? And so you start to create this entire life around things that keep you safe. And because you don't want to step out of that box, you don't want to feel that feeling again. And so you don't even make certain decisions that could even progress your life, like saying, like maybe going for that job promotion, but that's scary, that feels unsafe. So you don't go for that job promotion, or you don't branch off and do your own thing because it's scary, it feels unsafe. You don't maybe reach out to that person that you really want to talk to, that you think you have a huge crush on or something like that, right? But it feels unsafe. And so you don't take that step, and you just create your entire life, a cycle of all these different ways of keeping yourself safe. But what is it really doing for you?
Right. Well, because usually they're, at the time they might seem like these brilliant strategies that work to keep you safe, but then they stop working, or they're not really working. Like for example, what you see a lot with folks who've had trauma is isolation, right?
Mhm.
They like cut themselves off because they don't trust people, understandably in many cases, right? They don't trust people, they don't feel safe, so they avoid, right? I'm just gonna go home. No, 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 thanks for the invitation, but no. And so they're depriving themselves of ever having an experience that might show them that people could be safe, if you'd give them a chance. Not everybody, we tend to overgeneralize, right? Like, yes, of course, there were people unsafe because you got hurt originally, but not everybody, maybe not all of a certain kind of person. Because we'll say, well, all someone, an authority figure, right? Say they were the one who traumatized you. All authority figures are unsafe, or all men, or certain types of women, or whatever it is, are unsafe. And we're not even conscious of that. Sometimes it's generalized from the experiences that we've had. So creating safety seems like another really important step in this process of healing from trauma.
Yes, absolutely. And the number one thing is learning how to feel safe in your own body, because that's a big thing that can be taken away from us, right? That safety piece. It's not just safety out there, it's feeling safe in here. And that's a concept that we're just like, well, that's obvious, right? But like those tools and those tactics to really do it are a completely different thing. Just like self-love. We think we know what self-love is, but it's not getting your nails done. It's not really always getting your hair done, those outside things. It's that feeling of just loving and knowing who you are and feeling safe in this vessel. And when you can start to reclaim yourself and just to have those feelings come back to you, reclaim your energy and your essence and love those pieces of you. Those other things, like different triggers that you may have in life, that someone says something maybe that triggers you, a certain smell, a lot of times they start to dissipate, or they're not as extreme anymore, because you learn that this is my safe place. You know that you can always come back to you to find that safety and that love.
So important. Yeah. I mean, we know, as healers and people who work with folks with trauma, that you're absolutely right. The piece about safety, even within your own body, many people dissociate, what they like check out. They can't even stay present in their bodies because their body has been a source of pain, or their body has been a source of not being safe, or some trauma happened to their body, and like, why would you want to be in your body where that happened, feeling that, remembering that. So what are some ways in your work with folks that you help create that safety, whether that's, maybe we start with internal and then tell us about like the more interpersonal, external safety. How do people begin to even start to do that?
Yes, it's a beautiful question. And I always begin with just a really simple technique of just kind of like grounding your energy, because when you go through an extreme trauma, your energetic field is wide open. And sometimes we're taking on energy from other people around us and from the collective, and we don't even know what's ours versus what is theirs, because we are so empathic, because we learn to try to guess everyone's energy and just feel everyone's energy, because it kind of like helps us feel safe too. So we can kind of like determine what's going on, right? It's a safety mechanism for ourselves too. But to take all that on, it's really exhausting and it's not good for us. And so that's the first thing I always suggest, is to ground your energy. And I have a guided meditation I love to follow, where you cleanse your energy, you cleanse your field, you can ground into the earth, you feel roots going down deep down to the earth, and you see what it is like to be in your own energy without taking on the collective and what's going on around us. And then when you can start really feeling what it is to be you and what's here, you can more easily decipher what is yours and what you have to work through versus what someone else's that is theirs to work through.
Right. And a really important piece here too, and this is getting kind of real deep into like the psychology of it, but sometimes it's really surprising to my clients when we really start getting into the trauma itself, processing of the trauma, which I do believe is a step that needs to kind of happen in the whole process of healing, so you can release it and you can experience it in a safe way, and with a person that you feel safe with, which would be me or you, or maybe in a group setting, whatever it is, and then being able to kind of work through that and let it release it from your body. But what can come up for folks is that they can, what they don't realize is not only are you so open, you're taking on the energy of others, you might also be taking on the energy, if it was an interpersonal trauma, you might be taking on the energy of the person who was abusive or, harmed you in some kind of way. And a
Yeah.
lot of times that shame piece, right? Because people have a lot of shame about, especially like sexual trauma and stuff. Like, I'm kind of dirty now. I'm like, the ick kind of feeling. That might not even be coming from you. That actually might be the energy you picked up from the person who abused you, because also more than likely, it likely was done to them. And we have a whole pattern going back, who knows how far. But that ick isn't always coming from us. And we have the belief, because we get these beliefs themselves that come from having the trauma, like it's my fault, I'm damaged goods now, blah, 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 and all this shame stuff. But what if it's not even all yours? What if you took some of it on from the other person? And people are just like, whoa, kind of blown
Yeah.
away by that idea.
That is so true. And I have a great example for this where, so the gentleman I was raped by, he's actually my uncle, and he still lived half a mile down the road from me. He's still there. And I would always be able to sense when he was driving up the road. Like I could just feel it before he was even there. And before, I didn't really know what it was, right? I would just get sick to my stomach and feel angry and like I wanted to throw up and all these different things. But the more I started to recognize it, the more I realized, like you said, it was not my energy. It was just my sensory of him. And so I also allowed myself to kind of go through that whole process with so much love and compassion and tenderness for myself, because that is some deep shit, right? We have to give ourselves so much tenderness during that time. And it went through this whole cycle of course, hating him, resenting him, feeling sorry for him, to then, just pretend he didn't exist. And now it's just compassion, because I understand for him to have done that to me, how much pain and suffering he had also gone through. But, that's just a big, big lesson I learned in my life. But it all comes down to is really understanding my energy. So now I can understand when he does come through. It's shifted too, so I don't feel like I'm going to have to throw up anymore. It's just like, oh, there's a change here. And now I know that this is him. It's just this beautiful, I really enjoy it now because I can sense that there's a change. And so I know what's happening. And it's a gift, really, because I can sense it coming through. So it's not derailing me. It's not a surprise. It's like, oh, this is the universe's way of letting me know that he's about to come through. So if I need to do any grounding or any more self-care or anything I need to do for me to experience seeing him come down the road, that's what I can do right now.
And I think that can seem so inconceivable. I can imagine there might be people watching or listening to this and be like, how could you possibly even be around him? How could you possibly like have him in your life? Why is he not in prison? Like, I don't know how would you respond to that? And then I have kind of a follow-up question there.
I would say I understand completely because I went through that same thought pattern myself. Like me now looking back like 5 years ago, I would not be in this position where I can say I'm sending him love and wishing him like, the best of the world, right? I would just be like two middle fingers up and be like, no, just that's not right, X, Y, and Z. But then I realized through the process too that I was holding on so much anger still. And I didn't forgive him and move through that for him. I did it for me. And then they just ended up being a cherry on the top where I'm just more releasing. And the more I had room for more self-love and self-care in me, the more I released that anger and just that resentment towards him. Really, I did for me.
So that's what I wanted to highlight. That was really the next question is like, yeah, how do people transform their narrative of the experience that happened to them in the past, right? Because we have this, understanding. Of course, we can't change the past. And yeah, that's true. We can't go back and rewrite the history. We can't pretend it didn't happen. We can't pretend it didn't affect you in profound ways. But we can change the relationship we have to the narrative now. And our, particularly this piece, which I'd love for you to speak to, this idea of the sort of victim mentality that or the limiting beliefs, either thing, but the story we get stuck in of this horrible thing happened to me, I am a victim, I will forever be a victim. And then of course, when you believe that, you tend to get into more situations where that belief gets reinforced. See, it happened again, or something else happened. I'm a victim, I'm a victim. What does that do to someone, first of all, and then how do you help people get out of that and start to change the narrative?
Oh, it's such a beautiful and deep question. And I can relate to that so much because of course, I was there. And I even put myself in like positions to re-victimize myself to prove to myself that I was a victim. And I was there for quite some time. And I feel like that definitely is something we have to go through, right? We are in this era for a while, and we have to feel that discomfort in order to want to move through it. And then after the victimization, it's like the survivor mode and the warrior mode, and it's their own unique path moving through each level. And each level is almost necessary in order to get to the next, like that stepping stone, right? Like that ladder or that cosmic staircase. And what the two tools that helped me the most as far as progressing through that, well, there's a lot of tools, but core belief work and timeline research. Because, like you said, sometimes we're not even really aware of the core beliefs that are coming forward, that are shaping our cycles, our patterns, our self destructive behavior. So it's having this willingness to really be like, okay, something needs to change, right? Like life isn't happening to me. I have control. I have empowerment. I am this amazing person. And even if I don't feel it right now, I have hope that things will change. And that's really what hit me the hardest, was understanding that I didn't want to live life like that anymore. Didn't feel like living at all. And we all have to reach to some level of rock bottom before we're willing to make that change. I wish it wasn't so, but it just seems, for stubborn people, we learn things a really, really hard way. And some of us hit rock bottom quite a few times before we're willing to make that change, especially when trauma comes in. But core belief work, allowing ourselves to really sit with and be tender and conscious of, well, not even say conscious because it kind of comes forward from our unconscious, but just to be present with what comes forward. That's a huge piece. And core belief work can bring forward things such as, I don't deserve to live. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve X, Y, and Z. I'm not safe. I'm afraid of my own power. That's a big one that comes through. Or I'm a burden to people. All these things that we're shaping our life around that keep us stuck in that victimhood. And I really feel like acknowledging that you're there is really a huge step. And not shaming yourself for being there either. We've all been there. A lot of us have, and it's okay. It's part of that process. And just saying, okay, this is where I am right now. Oh, it freaking sucks, but this is where I am. And what do I need to do to start moving forward, to gain that trajectory, to move myself out of it, to move myself through it?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something about a timeline therapy or something like that. What is that?
Yes, timeline research. Thank you for bringing that up again. So I love dabbling in shamanism and Ayurveda, hypnosis and meditation. And I really don't care what you call it, because a lot of it works with the subconscious part of our brain, right? Turning off the monkey mind and letting us get deep into ourselves. And so timeline research is a method where we can visually see ourselves move forward or back on it, or more or less our timeline, to a point in our lives, maybe past lives, even if you believe in that, which I do, and to a point that has the most information for us of something that we need to witness or heal or be present with. And when you go back in that time or in that time frame, you see what there is to see, you feel, you sense, you just allow yourself to witness it. And sometimes it's through your own eyes, and sometimes it's like you're watching a movie screen. And when you go back into those moments, it's not always, some people are afraid it's like reliving that trauma. That's not what this is about. It's like a snapshot in time where that version of you needs support and needs love. And there's so much other information there that another part of you can see from a different perspective. And there's a lot of wisdom that can come in from just being back there with open arms, with open love. And it's really so, it feels like a miracle almost every single time. And there's so much wisdom to be gained from, like I said, seeing that from a different perspective and allowing yourself to give that version of you so much love.
I think you said it. I mean, offering a different perspective, right? And I love the parts piece. Like, but there are lots of different types of parts work we can do, but to start to like differentiate, like I am not my trauma or I'm not just my trauma. That is a part of me. That is a part of my history. That is um an experience or series of experiences from points in my timeline, and then you start to now tease out, like, I am not all of it, is not just the trauma. There's a part of me that is strong, that is a survivor, that's like that warrior. There's a part that's older and wiser now and understands things differently. And yes, there may also be a younger part, a really scared part, a part that's still in the pain, stuck in the trauma, stuck in the limiting beliefs, like whatever it is. And that part needs care and attention. But I am not the totality of that. I'm so much more. I think that is really, really huge in this. We're talking about changing the narrative. Having those different parts, bringing in different perspectives, um, bringing the trauma out of the shadows and the secret, because so much of it is like, I'm not even going to talk about it. And because, I do group work, at the rehab and stuff, and workshops and things, like hearing other people's stories, hearing how, like what we're talking about right now, like, how did you get through it? What helped you? All of that, but breaking the secrecy and the shame of like all around the secrecy is also, I think, really key in changing the narrative and in empowerment, because of course we're talking about empowerment, the whole thing is empowerment, and coming out of that victim consciousness. Can you say a little bit more about that, the secrecy and the hiding and the shame and stuff, and how you
Yes.
people around that?
Yeah, it is a really big thing. And part of it is like what we're conditioned to believe, right? But another part of it is just us not wanting to voice it because, again, those limiting beliefs, we're afraid of saying it out loud. And it's really, really tender. And so the people that are just afraid to voice it, I always recommend they journal, they write it down, right? Or just even record themselves saying it, because there's definitely a huge time where the first time you start saying it, you're going to choke up, right? You're going to be teary. You're going to like maybe not even be able to say full sentences or full words. But allowing yourself to voice it is really, it alchemizes it, right? It starts taking away that power it has on you. And you can almost visualize it as it just like coming out of you and making room for other things that kind of come in. And it really is, I would say, I'm trying to find the right words, but unfortunate that we put so much secrecy around it, because there are so many people who have gone through it and are here to just give you so much love and support. And we all just want to rise and grow and love together, and allowing yourself to own your own story, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Be like, oh, yeah, this happened. It sucks. And I feel all these freaking feelings right now, but I know I'm going to get through this. And if I have to reach out to find someone that you really feel comfortable with and trusting. And even like those different kind of modalities, there's so many different methods out there that are helpful. And there's no one right way to do it. It's just finding that thing that feels really good to you. One person, it might be aromatherapy. The other person, it might be chanting or singing, right? There's so many different tools that are so therapeutic to help you through that process. But you have to find the ones that resonate with you. That's really the ticket. If you find someone else, if it just doesn't feel good, it's not going to have the same effect than if you that intuitive alignment is just mwah, does everything.
Yeah, that's so important. And I know people have this fear that, if I start talking about it or I share my story, I'm going to be judged and I'm going to be rejected and people are going to be like, ew, like, and this, that, and the other. And what we find over and over again when we do this work with folks is like, actually the opposite tends to occur. When you finally, break your silence and you start speaking up about your experiences, it usually brings people closer to you, because there's an authenticity and everyone has a story. And then they start sharing, someone else starts sharing about their experience. And then you see this all the time. I always use this example, like with clients, with celebrities, right? We see celebrities have a fall from grace. They get in trouble for something, or they start sharing their story of like, these are some really awful things that happened in my life. We don't tend to judge. Actually, more people are like, wow, like that's amazing. And I can relate. And thank you so much for speaking out. Like over and over again, even the celebrities will tell you, I was so afraid to tell my story because people would rip me apart. But like instead, what they're finding is like support. Like on the comments, there's less of those troll comments. There may always be some, but more people are like, oh my gosh, yes, that happened to me too. And I'm so glad, I'm not alone. And we need to be talking about this. We need to take the stigma and the shame out of it. And because that's part of taking your power back.
Yes, absolutely. And when we do share our story little bits at a time and however we feel comfortable, it allows others the space to do the same. So it just kind of keeps that momentum rolling. Like, wow, I'm seeing them being really vulnerable. And I really admire that. It takes a lot of courage. And now maybe I have the strength to share my story.
And here's where I think now we're moving into the post-traumatic growth, right?
Yeah.
This is now, okay, maybe my experience wasn't just the narrative I have is this was a horrible experience. I'm going to be forever damaged by it. I will never heal from it, blah, blah, blah. And then we go through this process with all these different steps we're talking about. And now I can see, now I'm coming out the other side. I've done all this work and I can see like, wow, some value can come of this. Not only am I stronger now and wiser and whatever, I can grow from this experience, but maybe my experience helps someone else. Maybe my story can inspire someone else and give them hope, just like I think yours did in the beginning, when we first started talking. And thank you for being so vulnerable and authentic in the sharing of your story throughout this, because even if one person is touched by that, even if one person, you're offering them a different perspective or a little aha goes off for them, like, then your experience is of value. It's not just this terrible thing that's stuck there.
Absolutely. And someone used to tell me that once you have trauma, you always have trauma. You should learn how to live with it. And I don't believe that whatsoever. I used to, right? Until you kind of get through it and you see that that's not the case at all. That's where they were in their journey. And there really is a way to move through your trauma where I'm at the point now where I don't wish it never happened anymore, because I can see all the things that came through it because I did that work. I honored myself and I knew I was worth so much more than where I was. And it gave me just so many more gifts, right? The amount of space I can hold for other people, this healing modality that I have now with my own practice, and just so many other things that just help me find who I really am and what I want to offer the world.
Yes. And you have so many offerings too. I really want to highlight that as well. Let's talk a little bit about, you've got some ebooks, you have a website, you work with people. How can people find out more about all of this?
Yes, wonderful. I would suggest they go to my website, wildwisdomcoach.com. And there's so much amazing information on there. There's my 2 ebooks, Wild Warrior and From Trauma to Transcendence, which are both personal stories about just like really overcoming that deep shit. And I have other offerings on there too. And there's an entire page of just like freebies. I love freebies. I love getting them. I love giving them. Entire page of free resources. And if you're just kind of still curious and just kind of want to stalk me on Instagram a little bit, my handle is Lauren's Wild Wisdom.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren, for this. I think this was a very powerful conversation we've had. I'm super grateful to you and your willingness to show up so authentically as yourself in this wonderful, empowered way. I hope that what we've talked about today has inspired people, given them some hope, given them a different perspective. Any final thoughts for us?
I would just say, just own who you are, because everyone here is just, all your listeners and every person is just, they're so full of magic. And even the days that don't feel so freaking good, find something, one little piece that you're thankful for, because being full of gratitude can really shift things. And just be authentic. Just be you. Be quirky. Be weird. Do weird things with hands. Don't brush your hair. Whatever it is, own yourself. Just own it.
Oh, wise words. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you so much, audience, for tuning in today. If you have been moved by this episode, if you think it might help someone else, please do share it. Like, comment, subscribe, review, all the things that will allow this podcast to get out there in the hands of more people. Thank you so much. And I will see you next time on Kaleidoscope of Possibilities.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.